$9 billion. That's how much investors lost when Elizabeth Holmes's Theranos empire collapsed. But the real crime wasn't just the money vanishing into thin air. It was the deception she built it on, brick by brick, lie by lie. This is the story of how a Stanford dropout convinced the world she'd revolutionized blood testing, and how a handful of relentless investigators and whistleblowers tore down one of Silicon Valley's most audacious frauds. It starts in 2003. Elizabeth Holmes is 19 years old. She drops out of Stanford University and tells her parents she's going to start a company that will change medicine forever. She calls it Theranos, a portmanteau of therapy and diagnosis. Her vision is bold, a device that can run hundreds of blood tests from just a few drops of blood instead of the traditional vials. No need for needles, no need for labs. Medicine reimagined. On the surface, it sounds revolutionary. Investors loved it. Walgreens loved it. Safeway loved it. By 2013, Theranos was valued at $9 billion. Holmes was the world's youngest self-made billionaire. Forbes put her on the cover. She wore black turtlenecks, a deliberate echo of Steve Jobs, and spoke in a measured, almost robotic tone that conveyed absolute certainty. People believed her because she believed herself, or at least that's what she wanted the world to think. But behind the polished presentations and the promises, something wasn't right. The machines didn't work the way Holmes claimed they did. Ramesh Sonti was one of the first people inside Theranos to sense the truth. He was a quality assurance engineer, and his job was to monitor the reliability of the Edison machines, the devices supposedly capable of running all those tests from tiny blood samples. As Sonti studied the data, he realized something alarming. The machines weren't accurate. They were producing wildly inconsistent results. Tests run on the same sample would yield different outcomes. The margins of error were unacceptable. This wasn't a machine that could revolutionize medicine. It was a machine that could harm patients. Sonti documented everything. He sent emails to management. Nothing changed. Instead, Theranos pushed forward with real patients. They partnered with Walgreens. They installed Edison machines in drugstores across the country. Patients were walking into pharmacies and getting blood tests run on unreliable machines. The implications were staggering, but reporting this internally got Sonti nowhere. So he did something that took real courage. He went to the authorities. He spoke to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. He spoke to regulators. Sonti became the first major whistleblower, but the world didn't know his name yet. His warnings were filed away in government databases, while patients continued using the faulty machines. Then came Tyler Schultz. Schultz was a young engineer, smart and idealistic, the grandson of former Secretary of State George Shultz. He joined Theranos believing he was working on something genuinely important. But within weeks, he discovered the same thing Sonti had found. The machines didn't work. Schultz raised his concerns with superiors. Holmes herself dismissed him. He was told he didn't understand the science. He was pressured to stay silent. They suggested legal action if he talked to outsiders. They threatened his career. Schultz refused to be intimidated. He began secretly documenting problems. He recorded conversations. He gathered evidence. And then, in 2015, he reached out to someone who could actually tell the story. Journalist John Carreyrou at the Wall Street Journal. Here's where the investigation becomes a thriller. Carreyrou is a meticulous reporter. He has won Pulitzer Prizes. He doesn't publish stories on speculation. He publishes them on evidence. When Schultz came to him with allegations about Theranos, Carreyrou decided to investigate. He began reaching out to former employees. More whistleblowers emerged from the shadows. They all told similar stories. The technology simply didn't work as advertised. Holmes and her chief operating officer, Sunny Balwani, had claimed the machines were being used in military helicopters and on the battlefield in Afghanistan. Both claims were false. The company had sent false quality control reports to pharmaceutical companies and regulators. They'd misrepresented their revenue numbers to investors. But proving this required more than just allegations. Carreyrou spent months reporting. He interviewed dozens of people. He examined records. He contacted Holmes and Theranos repeatedly for comment. The company's lawyers sent aggressive letters threatening legal action against both Carreyrou and the journal. They tried to intimidate him into silence. Theranos was a master at secrecy and intimidation, creating a corporate culture where employees feared speaking out, where dissent meant your career would be destroyed. On October 15, 2015, Carreyrou published his first story in the Wall Street Journal. Hot startup Theranos has struggled with its blood test technology. The headline was restrained, but the story was devastating. Within hours, it triggered an avalanche. Regulators opened investigations. The FBI got involved. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services revoked Theranos's Clinical Laboratory Improvement Amendment certification for their Newark, California facility. The company had been running unauthorized tests. They were shut down. Holmes and Balwani fought back hard. They sued Carreyrou. They denied everything. But the truth was already unstoppable. More reporting followed. Carreyrou published more stories. Other journalists picked up the investigation. A book was written. Holmes became not a visionary, but a cautionary tale about ambition unmoored from ethics. In June 2018, federal prosecutors indicted Holmes and Balwani on multiple counts of wire fraud and conspiracy. Prosecutors alleged they defrauded investors, doctors, and patients, each group in different ways, but all with the same underlying dishonesty. The charges carried decades of potential prison time. And here's the twist that nobody expected. Elizabeth Holmes's defense was startling. She testified that Balwani had sexually and emotionally abused her. She claimed she was a victim of his manipulation, that he'd made the representations to investors without her full knowledge. The narrative shifted from calculating fraud to a power-imbalanced relationship where the younger founder had been controlled by her more experienced partner. In January 2022, the jury found Holmes guilty on 4 counts of wire fraud. She was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Balwani, tried separately, was convicted on 12 counts of wire fraud. He received nearly 13 years. But justice doesn't return $9 billion to the people who lost it. It doesn't restore the years of careers damaged by association with fraud. It doesn't undo the fear patients felt when they realized they'd been getting blood test results from machines that didn't work. The Theranos fraud became the defining case study of Silicon Valley's willingness to move fast and break things, including the law. It showed how a compelling narrative, a charismatic founder, and the promise of disruption could override due diligence. Sophisticated investors, major retailers, and regulators all failed to ask the hard questions soon enough. They trusted the story when they should have demanded the data. The people who stopped it, Ramesh Santi with his meticulous documentation, Tyler Schultz with his courage to speak up despite the threats, John Carreyrou with his dogged investigative reporting. They're the ones who deserve to be remembered. They saw something was wrong, and they refused to let it be buried. $9 billion was lost. 2 founders went to prison. Patients potentially received inaccurate medical information. But the system, imperfect as it is, eventually worked. The fraud was uncovered. The liars were prosecuted. The company was dismantled. That's the reality of financial crime in the modern era. It often takes insiders to expose it, journalists to report it, and regulators to act on it. No single person brings down a fraud this massive. It takes a chain of people making difficult choices. Follow the Grift Reports for more financial crime stories.